Oh, as I've started saying of late, because I say boom, but it says go on the screen. Welcome to a very, very special day here in the Good Listening To Show Clearing. I'm Chris Grimes, motivational comedian, mojo coach, and I am the curator of the Good Listening To Show. Today is exciting because Josh Wheeler is from bbroadcast.co.uk, a broadcast PR expert specializing obviously in media relations. I was introduced to the lovely Josh Wheeler by Nina Webb, who is the queen of brazen PR, the CEO. She's similarly, Oasis are in Cardiff tonight, but both Josh and Nina's entity, Brazen, are in Manchester, mad for it. And Josh Wheeler has very excitingly agreed to experience a particular series strand called Legacy Life Reflections from Within, with a desire to see if we can sort of help and work together and blow some happy smoke reciprocally, which is very exciting. So, Josh Wheeler, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Chris. The queen. I wouldn't say Nina is the queen of brazen. She's the queen of Manchester, I would say. So to be honest, anything that Nina kind of says to me, it's already got my kind of gold stamp of approval on. So yeah, I think this should be fun.
And she's had a glow up right there, not just the Queen of Brazen, but the Queen of Manchester. That's fantastic. Lovely. So, welcome to the show. We've just had a very nice exchange where you've got livid about two things: the potential speed of the Wi-Fi, and then what's the other thing? Just to share with us that you got absolutely you went on a scale from naught to livid. Not about us, but what made you livid else, Josh?
Can you tell I'm a little bit dramatic at times? I was livid because we were talking about holiday and I'd been away in Crete a couple of months back and it was rainy the first couple of days. So rather than I was livid, I was really annoyed, and rather than keep being livid, I was like, I'm gonna find somewhere that's just gonna be hot, it's gonna be sunny, it's gonna be like that. There's no way it can be anything else. And so I'm going away on Monday to somewhere hot. So I was just saying that's it. Most things that I do are driven just on the basis that I'm annoyed about
And
something.
I can love the picture of you in Crete shaking your fist, why I order at the sky. And makes you absolutely livid, which is fantastic. When we first met a couple of months ago, what was so striking was how empathic you were with my sort of cut and thrust of Legacy Life Reflections, because you'd done quite a bit within the hospice sector, one of the many, many award-winning projects you've been involved in since 2010. But just position, first of all, Be Broadcast. What's the story
Mm.
behind the story of that, and how long are you into that?
So B Broadcast is coming up to its third birthday. We are a specialist broadcast PR agency, and what that means is we work with brands, individuals, organizations, charities. We work with people that have got something to say, and what we overlay in that is that we're keen on social purpose. We're keen on things that are going to bring good to the world. We move away and we keep a distinct focus away from things that aim to kind of drive division, even unintentionally. We're just hyper aware of, the role that we get to play, the really important position of taking stories and bringing them to media, and the power that we have. So we kind of avoid things that look at generational divides where one generation is being kind of cut and one isn't. We try to look at the things that unite us and focus in on those aspects instead. And it's doable. It's completely doable. We don't need to be, attacking Gen Z or millennials or whoever, because as far as I'm aware, everyone quite likes avocados. But from my memory, when I was a young millennial, we were being attacked for eating avocados, and at the time, I remember thinking, well, I can't even afford an avocado. That kind of experience drives us in that direction. So we're really lucky. We work with some amazing organizations, amazing people that are kind of committed to doing the same things as us, getting great stories out there, helping brands and organizations grow and develop. And as you say, we've worked on some incredible things that have then gone on to win awards, and we're just really lucky. And it's born from working in the industry since 2010, and looking at it, having deep experience in areas, and looking and thinking how we can do things differently, a little bit more human, I think is what we bring to it.
You're so intrinsically collaborative. You use the word we there so often. So, may I ask the size of Be Broadcast? How many of you are there in the sort of royal we that you're using?
So there are 4 of us
Ah,
full time, and then we have a team of freelancers that we bring in that are basically kind of with us for the charge, and we pick up and scale up and down where we need to. And the aim is that we keep growing in the direction of travel that we are. We've got, I'd say we've got big growth plans. We're not a organization that is ever going to scale and be huge. It's not my intention. I don't see the need or the point for that. It's we're growing in a way that is right for us. It's I don't want to say we're a family agency with, with all the connotations that come of that, but where I want it to go is to become a kind of a family of brands that feed into each other and provide a really important place within the market. And I think we're absolutely on that journey.
and happy third birthday. And there's the
Thanks.
final thing to say about that. If you're livid, you can even smash an avocado. So
Yeah,
come on,
exactly. There
you've
you go.
So let me get you on the open road of what we're going to be doing together. There's a bit of a hybrid I've already described. We're doing a founder story to talk about all things Be Broadcast, but also you've given me permission to take you extra deep into legacy life reflections. So just to explain that, this is the show in which, as a sort of helicopter overview, I invite movers, makers, shakers, mavericks, influencers, and also personal heroes into a clearing or serious happy place of my guests' choosing, as we all share with as they share with us rather their stories of distinction and genius. Within that scape, that storyscape, Brand-Strand Founder Stories is one way of taking a helicopter landing into the clearing. But this is legacy life reflections without any morbid intention. This is to use the construct that Josh and I are about to go through to record either your story or the story of somebody really precious to you for posterity, lest we forget before it's too late. And I'll explain at the end. My own father was a very willing a willing guinea pig 5 years ago. My dad very sadly died last August, but he knew what I was up to, and he's become a bit of a happy mascot for the idea that we all know when we've lost that precious, special someone, what we miss the most is what they sounded like, the sound of their voice. So thank you for agreeing to let me take you through this sort of hybrid approach, Josh.
I think it's incredible. I think that you mentioned I've done things in. We'll probably talk about some of them in like hospices and the care setting, but I've also done an awful lot in terms of later life planning and death from a PR point of view. And I remember when I first started and I got brought onto the account, and I was like, oh God, how how am I going to get radio, which has a skews slightly older demographic in some senses? How am I going to get them to talk about thinking about death? And actually, the nervousness was completely wrong, because it's the way, it's like with everything, it's the way you bring people into it, and actually it's telling stories and getting people to open up, and this is the perfect thing. And the story about your father, you can then listen back to it forever, and that's beautiful.
I love that. The fact that the ultimate challenge is the Grim Reaper, death needs a PR job, and you've stepped in and you've done that.
That's one of the awards.
Wonderful. We've actually made the Grim Reaper look good, which is fantastic. So, as I say, there is no morbid intention, because it's also, I've been told, like having a day spa for your brain. So it's my absolute pleasure, Josh Wheeler, to invite you to have your own curated day spa for your brain. So should we get going then?
Let's do it.
So there's going to be a clearing a tree, a lovely juicy storytelling exercise called 5 4 3 2 1. There's going to be some alchemy, some gold, a couple of random squirrels, a cheeky bit of Shakespeare, a golden baton, and a cake. So it's all to play for. So first of all, Josh Wheeler, Be Broadcast PAR expert. What is, and interestingly, just before we went on air, you said, this is what I struggled with the most. But where would you say your clearing or serious happy place was? Where do you go to get clutter free, inspirational, and able to think?
So I really struggled with this one, because I was thinking about the way that my mind works, and in many ways it works in a really effective way. My mind, I feel, works at a million miles per hour, um consistently. Oh, thank you, Rachel. um uh I feel that my kind of like place where I can step out and uh, kind of disconnect is the beach. And I don't just mean the beach on holiday. I also mean I also mean here in the UK. So I've got two dogs. I love being able to take them and like paddle in the sea. But it's the only place that I'm able to just zoom out of everything. And it just I think there's something really about the water connection. There's something else about water a bit later on that just really brings me out of my head. Which I thought, you know, how naff to say like, "Oh, the beach," but it kind of is. But yeah, I
And
think
may
that's
I
where I'd go.
just blow some extra happy smoke at you? That was not naff at all. Your that has the whole seascape of PR as a huge vista stepping out before you, and lots of voyages of discovery. That made complete sense. So, would you like to pin a, you know, that what brilliant app? What three words? Would you like to pin yourself to a particular beach, or are we just talking about generically the beach?
Ooh, I would, you know what? I would maybe go Crosby Beach. It's the one that we go to the most, and um, yeah, I would go Crosby Beach in terms of yeah, good memories there, like good fun. So I would go there.
Lovely. And you said we again. We're not just talking about the two dogs there. Who else are we going
My
with?
my partner as well. Yeah, my partner.
Lovely. So, for those of us who aren't sort of totally, it's up north is Cosby Beach, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So it's about so I'm based in Manchester. It's about an hour away from us, and it's the one with the you've probably seen it like the statues kind of
Ah,
built into the
yes.
sand. That's the one. Yeah. It's not, do you know what? It's a lovely beach. Is it the most beautiful beach? Probably not.
Yeah.
I love it, but it's yeah, it's where you like I've taken the dogs and they've gone paddling and they're like Axel's first experience of the water and yeah, that for me is the place.
And I'm thinking Gormley. Is that right? Is that the artist who's put the statues there? Is it
That's the one.
John
That's the one.
Gormley? Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there we are in Cosby, if I got that right, Cosby Beach or Crosby,
Crosby. Crosby.
as in Bing. Lovely.
Yeah.
Bing bang bosh, off we go. Brilliant. So now I arrive with a tree in your clearing, which, because of my hecting background, is deliberately a bit waiting for Godot-esque, a bit existential. I'm going to shake a tree now to see which storytelling apples fall out. How'd you like these apples? And you've been kind enough, Josh, to have thought about four things that have shaped you, three things that inspire you, two things that never fail to grab your attention, and borrowed from the film Up, where the dog goes, "Oh, squirrels." What are your monsters of distraction, sometimes called your shiny object syndrome? We'll get onto that. What never fails to distract you. And then the one is a quirky or unusual fact about you we couldn't possibly know about you until you tell us. So over to you, Josh. It's not a memory test. I'll curate you
Mm,
through it. So,
yeah.
four things that have shaped you.
So I think the first thing that I would say has shaped me is growing up in a tiny little village in the West Midlands where ultimately as a kind of a crossover as an example, there was one bus into the nearest town that took 45 minutes to get there once every 2 hours. So really disconnected, um, small, you know, could have kind of gone in a completely different direction. So I think one of the things that I just knew is that I wanted to see more. I wanted to experience more in the world, and I think that that has definitely shaped me. Not knocking the place at all. It's just one of those things that put me on a bit of a trajectory early on. Um, I think the second
Just
bit.
before you move away from that, do you mind just naming the
Mm,
place? We're not shaming it. We're just saying that it put you into a cul-de-sac you knew you needed to escape, which I completely understand.
exactly. No, escape's not even the right word, but it kind of is. It's more just a case of I knew I wasn't going to stay there forever,
Yeah.
and that was it. It was so it's a little village called Kyneton in between Stratford and Leamington in the West Midlands. Royal Leamington Spa officially. Um, Great, lovely place, but just it it was almost like I, I was inside an egg that it needed to kind of to be bigger. Um, I think from then on, I went straight from there to London, and that's quite a shock to the senses. Uh, the kind of the next kind of bit that I think shaped me is the people that I met when I was there. So I'd kind of perhaps come in as a bit sort of rough and ready, um, experiencing the world. So, pals at uni that, you go to uni, you meet lots of different people with lots of different experiences, bringing you, kind of guiding you. But also people that I met in the world of work. So like one chap that weirdly I connected up again this week with Andy, who taught me. It's funny, I spoke to him about this recently. He taught me the notion of um, kind of just being cool and calm in situations. I always looked at him, I would be flapping about things. He was my account director at the time. I would be flapping about things, and he would always be, just the air of cool. And I was like, I'm so jealous of that. I am jealous of that. And actually, it taught me that that really is the ability, looking at things and kind of seeing them for what they are, and being able to do things. You can do things, but you don't need to get to 100 miles per hour. That, I think, had a real impact on me, and changed the way that I've gone off. So I'm more of that kind of swan mentality, I think, where I try to provide, everything's fine, it will be fine, this is what we're going to do, but underneath there's that.
Majestic Swan. And what's Andy's
Mm.
second name, just to sort of give him the mention?
Andy Crisp.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very good.
um the third thing is, I would say it's the jobs that I had early on. So I funnily enough, I don't look towards university or even kind of early PRE jobs as necessarily that shaping. I look at more in terms of the focal points of what I did that helped me to see the broader world. So for instance, we talked about it, I worked at a care home when I was 11, 12, I think, and I was a tea boy. And I used to finish school and I would go to the care home and I would make tea, and I used to get £50 a month. And I thought I was rich. £50 a month making tea for an hour. I'd go round, serve, and then collect up and wash up the cups. And actually, what I was rich in was the skill set of being able to talk to people. Lots of people who were nonverbal, lots of people who were poorly and unable to kind of communicate, and then lots of people that just really wanted to communicate and wanted to share stories and get to know people. We also dealing with people with things like Alzheimer's, and who incredibly awful situation, but just being able to realize that people are not that different. There's not a lot that divides us in lots of ways. And then from that, when I got a little bit older, I went and became a till boy at Tesco, and loved Tesco. It's my favorite brand of all time, and I still shop there. But I worked there on Saturdays and Sundays, and it reinforced this notion that actually you don't need to be afraid of talking to this person or that person. That person could be um a millionaire, that person could be, whatever. It could be anybody, but ultimately we were all pretty much buying the same fruit and veg, same products. If there was a promotion on, most people bought that thing. And so I got to see really quickly how actually we are pretty much alike. And I think that's those sorts of learnings have taken us to where B broadcast is today. Like it's how can we unite people over the things that we've got in common and
Yeah.
tell those stories, as opposed to finding the things that we don't have in common and picking apart. And that's why I think we work.
Wonderful answer. I love that.
uh,
Yes.
and I think the final thing that has shaped me is somewhere in the middle, and it's the it's the realization that probably came a bit too late in my career, but it probably came that um, being busy doesn't necessarily mean being fulfilled. So there were periods of my career where I felt a need to just be on a wheel. and I needed to do everything at 1,000 miles per hour, and my brain totally allowed that. And it probably before it had a term was kind of getting close towards burnout. So that focus on, I can take that on, I can do this, I can do that, and I'm going to pull all these things together, and then letting that hit you is quite rough. So that bit, that realization is the probably the final kind of chapter of things that have shaped me. Getting that cemented. It's not perfect, but getting much better at balancing all of that.
And self-awareness being the holy grail in your timeline to the point when you realized, whoa, because you are wired to go fast. That's a very deep skill and ability and capability. You talked about Andy giving you more of a Zen approach, if you like, to being calmer. But on your journey, how long ago was the encroachment towards burnout?
Well, there's been a couple of times. There's been a couple of points where I think I had the realization probably about 5 or 6 years ago, and I probably put it into action just before I started B Broadcast. Where so during the pandemic, working in broadcast was really rough. Um, Not because of the like a downturn, but actually the opposite. It was an upturn, uptick even, in the sense that we were all at home, so people were, in brand mind, people were watching TV, listening to the radio more, and we saw the results of that, and so actually the work probably tripled. But
Wow.
the work also went from being, telling stories about how to unite us to um, informing people how they can have a funeral, how they can say goodbye to their loved one without having a funeral. And that, I think that takes its toll. And it certainly did on me. And when we started to come out of lockdown, the whole process, I mean, I sort of looked and reflected and thought, I just want to do something. I want to do something different. I want to have a little bit of a more meaning in what we do.
Yes. And also, just in researching you before today, I was very struck with your most recent LinkedIn post, which is about reminding us in this sort of wave and a torrent of AI coming at us like a sort of tidal wave, to remember to still remain human and connecting. And
Mm.
I noticed how you were referencing, historical imperatives of the Luddites when the looms arrived, and the robotic burger flippers of the land. And we always assume doom and gloom, but actually we always need people and we always need relationships.
We always do. We always do, and we always need to tell stories, which is why I quite like this. We need to tell stories, and I think because I was thinking about this, and I love history. I find it fascinating, and when I look at those things, the kind of the perception is that this happened and then this happened, when actually the reality is not always as clear cut. And I think that AI is just another one of those moments. It's just another one of those moments. It's going to change everything. It is changing everything, but it we just have to remember our place in all of that. And I think it's so easy to jump straight to, job cuts, jump straight to this because this is going to solve all of these problems. When in reality, it's gonna speed things up. It's going to do X, Y, and Z. But I imagine that fairly soon we will start to see organizations realize that actually it's not going to do everything for you. I'm just waiting for it to be able to make me a coffee, and then I'm solved. Like, that's sorted then.
I love that. Wonderful. So that's great shapeage to that point. So now in the tree curation shaking structure, we're on to three things that inspire you now, Josh.
Yes. So the things that inspire me are, and kind of really get me motivated, are people who want to make a difference. People that are doing what might be seen as small fry. And it's funny, we do quite a lot of stories and activity where people are fundraising for a specific cause, and it absolutely flies in broadcast, and it makes sense kind of where my mind is at and where that subset of media look at. So I'm always inspired by scrappy, imperfect people that aren't, fully trained in doing everything in the, to the T. I find those people that are just pushing in their way the most inspiring of all. That I think of things that we've done over the years. I remember doing an interview with a case study for a story, and this amazing girl who I think she was 20 at the time. And now I think back, I'm much older than that, but I wasn't. I was probably about the same age, to be honest. I was doing this interview and it was all about financial abuse within relationships. And at the time, there was no law against that. As in, if we were in a relationship and I were to commandeer all of your bank cards and everything, there was nothing that really, looked at it. And it always went hand in hand with domestic abuse. And I was interviewing her, but really my job is to listen and tick off and make sure the person's delivered the messaging for the campaign. And she was talking to me and she was explaining the abuse that she'd gone through. And I realized in that moment that for her, this wasn't a campaign, this was her life.
Yes.
And I was up to that point treating it as a campaign. And those people really inspire me. So people that are just pushing in their way to make whatever it is that they're doing better, I think they're the gold tickets in life. Um, the the other bit is when people feel seen or heard. I hope that it's something that I do. You can never say for certain that you're doing everything in the right way, but I think back to moments in my career where people have uh, taken time to not necessarily explain something, but just taken time to just guide you through. I think back to the first pitch that I ever did, and I was drafted in, I think at the 11th hour for some reason, and I was terrified. If I remember rightly, it was a repitch as well, which is never a great place.
We'll try again.
And yeah, well, and I was really nervous, and I remember one of the really senior people at this big corporate agency that I worked at, she grabbed me. She was like, "Hey, have you got 20 minutes?" And it turned into like an hour where she just walked me through the pitch in her own time. And I still remember that moment as just being, it was about kindness. It wasn't about whether or not we won that pitch. I don't think she thought we were going to. Um, and I think it was just about kindness of, I'm going to make sure that he's actually okay in this. And so those moments where you can just take an extra step and an extra beat, I always think of when I hear people saying like, I'm too busy for this. I just think, oh,
Are you?
that's
Yes.
that's the one thing that I just hope I never say, and I doubt I get it right. But um, yeah, when someone spends that time, I think those people again are inspiring. They're the ones
A
to look at.
human connecting with a currency of kindness is the through line there and the thread, and
Yes.
that collaboration. Because what I get from you by the bucket load is the intrinsic desire to want to collaborate.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's the best way. I think where you can really bring in strengths together and put people together and drive something forward. I think that is the best way. Um, it's not always the most commercial way, but the world is changing. The world is evolving, and that bit is going to become more and more important. Um, the other bit I find inspiring is and these probably all sound a bit of a cop out, but the other bit I find inspiring is conversation. So and specifically conversations that are equal part sharp and equal part stupid. So I try to, well, I feel that I am not a corporate. I don't give off an air of corporate, although we work with some corporates, and I'm au fait and comfortable briefing a CEO in terms of what they need to do versus, say a charity that's on the ground doing something uh, in a grassroots perspective. I love and I'm inspired by deep conversations with people that are working in things, doing something, and you get to hear the hard reality. Because my brain is then thinking, well, that what you've just said there has made me think of 7 things that we don't, as a society, we don't know about when it comes to this industry or this sector. And there have been so many amazing pieces of work that we've done from that have kind of just been inspired by a conversation, not necessarily with a marketing person or a PR person, but someone who's on the kind of the front line of things. And I think that's important, certainly in our space, having deep experience of doing things like, if we ever got the chance to work with Tesco, if you're listening, people, I would make sure that people kind of have that deep experience of working on the tills, stacking shelves, knowing what that is like, having customers come and talk to you and their frustrations and their stuff like that. That to me is is magic. That's the stuff that we really need to get back to thinking about. Where is the interaction and where we can really learn stuff from, where people feel comfortable to kind of just chew the cud, moan a bit, and give a bit of reality to what is often printed out on a piece of paper and you have to kind of work from. I think we need to get back to that importance of putting people front and center again. I think
I love the fact this has turned into a very beautiful, and I hope it works for you, pitch for the Tesco account, because you used to do it. You were bipping away, beep, beep, beep. You were there. The tea boy
not to,
then
not,
became the
not,
tiller, the till man. Wonderful. From boy to
not to
man.
brag, I have 2 Tesco Customer Services Awards. One says for being smiley, which I don't remember being smiley at the time. We started off being furious.
Somebody would mash your avocados for you if you got furious. That's fantastic. So wonderful stuff. So I think that's the 3 inspires. Now we're on to the squirrels. So what never fail? What are your monsters of distraction? What never fails to stop you in your tracks, irrespective of anything else? It could be what makes you furious, but I don't know. So what are your 2 squirrels, would you say, Josh?
So my 2 things. The first one, unfortunately, is politics. So, um, pre-Brexit, I was definitely one of those people that just did not pay attention. Really, it didn't impact my life. I didn't think about it. Post-Brexit, and then kind of immediately post-Brexit, I was definitely one of those people that became really engaged, um, more furious than anything, um, at just the general state of things. Because I think I I'm not going to get political. Don't worry about any particular party or theme or anything like that. But just the general view and the general um, position. It, I watch things like Prime Minister's questions, and I despair at just the state that we're in. Um, there would be no boardroom where anyone would be able to behave like that. And I understand there's history and there's things, but I think what's really interesting is when I watch this, I think about young people who are less and less engaged, um, with traditions that we have and that are really important, like Prime Minister's questions, um, and who are active on social media and just looking in different places. And I don't think we've cottoned on to that yet from a political perspective. Similarly, you look at the processes we have around things like the state opening of Parliament. When you look at that, and there's so much in terms of tradition, but how much does that mean to a person who's voting for the first time? I don't even think they know that that's happening. And yet so much money, time, attention, focus, security, everything goes into it. And so I think the way that organizations and the way that we work is making sure that what we're doing is hitting an audience, and we spend so much time obsessing over that, to then look at politics and people not voting in, say, local elections and stuff like that. It infuriates me that we're in this kind of status
Yes.
and kind of
The birth of
paralysis.
your sort of social responsibility, which is part of the cut and thrust of Be Broadcast as well. Now it's got to be truthful, meaningful, kind, with a social responsibility.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's the the very, very baseline of it. You know, we are, as every organization is, we're apolitical. I have my own views, but we are apolitical. And actually we have to help organizations tap into the challenges that we're facing. But I think in many ways, sometimes it's almost better to be on the, on the ground yourself than actually engaging at the top level, which is so bad
Mm.
to say, that position. But there's a lot of great work being done at brand level that doesn't always get the support that it deserves, um, that is helping people, and that I think is vital.
And the
I
great
would
travesty,
love to see a change.
and what's very relatable is the great travesty of politics is how binary, black, white, right, wrong it's all become. And of course, what's really rich is the humanity that resides in the middle.
Mm,
These are real
yeah,
people's lives, feelings, consequences.
absolutely,
So
absolutely.
so
Yeah,
that's a great
yeah.
squirrel to be totally attuned to the idea of social responsibility within politics. That's a great squirrel. No one's ever answered that in my circa 250 episodes in that way. That's lovely. Thank you. Second squirrel.
Yes, the
What are your
second
dogs? What are
squirrel
your dogs'
is
names? Because sometimes
Dolly.
Dolly,
So they're Dolly and Axel.
love that.
So I've got a lovely story about this. So we had Dolly and Oscar, and we lost Oscar a couple of years ago. But we joked that Dolly Parton never had an Oscar. She never got an Oscar, so he was her Oscar. Um, and then we did it differently this year. This year with Axel, we came down to a short list. We got down to two names in the end, and we put them both on a piece of paper, and we put treats on them, and we let Dolly pick. She went to one, and then she went to the other one, and then she picked the other one, and that was Axel. So yeah, that's
Lovely.
how, that's how they came about.
And the question on everyone's lips, what was the name on the other bit of paper with the treat on it?
The other one was Tommy.
Tommy. So
Yeah,
yes, I love that. So Axel and Dolly, how lovely. So Dolly presumably just adores the new Axel. So that's lovely,
she
even though she didn't get an
loves him.
Oscar. And I'm sorry you knocked
Yeah.
Oscar. Are they the same breed?
They are. They are. So she's 13, and he is just coming up to 2 now. And they just play all day. And he's really brought her out of, when you get a little bit older, he's really brought her out of that. She plays with all of her toys. It's so sweet. And then she's very motherly towards him as well.
There's a
It's
lovely
lovely.
resonance in the idea of just give somebody a damn good listening to, which is partly what I'm up to. But the idea that, Axel's arrived and is giving Dolly a really good listening to. And then look, Dolly's got an extraordinary life of 13 years and you need to just tune into this experience
It,
and
it,
get her to play
it,
more.
it's absolutely true, because we say as well, the speed of which he picked things up. So toilet training, if, like, I mean, he was very sweet. He was like, he tries very hard with things, um, but he picked it up really quick because he was watching and paying attention. And when we give them things that he hasn't had before, he always looks to her first.
Oh.
So there is that passing of information. It's true. It's true. And we don't do it enough.
I'm really struck again with reminding myself of you being the tea boy back in the day, as the very popular person that did the circuit, able to connect with everyone as you went round by watching, observing, which I know will really inform all of your sort of brand expertise because you've just found a way to connect with so many people.
Look, it honestly is, when I talk about this, and I could go on a real soapbox about it. When I think about the things that have helped me in work, it is exactly those jobs. It's also, I worked at, I think we'll talk about tech in a moment, but I worked at Phones for You as well. And they used to make us, not make us, they used to encourage us, to go out there and stop people in the street and talk to them about their phone contract. Terrifying. But once you've done it 5 times, you realize that it's just someone will just tell you to go away, not so politely. And once you've had that, you're like, "Oh, that's fine." And that skill of just realizing that whoever it is you're talking to is just a human. They're just going about their day. They might be having the worst day in the world, and that's just, what's happening. Is quite a lot of power in realizing that you don't need to be starstruck or scared or intimidated. So we work with a lot of talent that could be quite scary to kind of deal with. It doesn't phase me, because I think early on I just had that view and that understanding that, do you know what, they're going to want a cup of tea, or they're going to want a coffee, or they're going to want a biscuit in an hour, or so. There's so many things that you can just
And you
connect
know
with
what's
people.
relatable? Rob Brydon wants a sausage roll for tomorrow. That's fine.
Good for him.
A
Good for
sausage roll
him.
shall be yours.
You see, and so and it's probably quite daunting to have Rob, and to have, you'll probably be feeling like, oh, I want to get these questions right and do this and do that. But actually, when you realize that Rob is not going to be he was about to say he's not going to be much different to me. He's more fun, but to other people, he's not going to be that different. And then when you realize that, actually everything becomes a lot easier. And it's something we all get really heads up about. And that, I know that there's been a big change in terms of young people getting things like Saturday jobs and stuff like that. And I think it's a real shame. And it's a blight on the brands, like the retail brands and things like that. And I understand there's lots of challenges there, but that is so important to us,
You
not
mean not?
just for
You
people
mean
in
not
work.
getting Saturday jobs anymore? Or
Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
okay.
yeah.
In
It's I
organisations.
think it's I think it's vital. I genuinely think it's vital. I think it's something to help bring young people out of their shells.
Yeah,
Um, it, 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 I mean, obviously, there's going to be instances, but of people that find it difficult. But I think it's so important. I think it's even having those moments where you can break through. That I think is really, really key, and it sets you up in a whole different way. Plus, you end up with stories. We used to I don't know if I should. No, the company doesn't exist anymore. Phones for You went under. We used to, those people that have to collect money from shops and like take it back, and they put it in those big vans.
if
Those
you
ones.
recall, those sort of people. Yes.
There was a guy that used to come, and he used to have to collect money from the shops, and we used to try and stop him every day, and try and sell him a phone contract when he was back with this money, just for something to do, right? And we laugh about it, but at the time, it kept us going, and you just get through things like that, and I
Yeah.
think we're missing that. We're missing that element, I think.
Again, very relatable. My first ever job was as head Saturday boy at Safeways before it became Morrison's. So there you
Yes.
like your Tesco's. I was Safeways. Marvelous.
I went on a school trip to the bakery at Safeways. It's all of these little moments
It's
that
all out there.
they're just in here. Yeah, yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
And I might have hijacked your squirrel. I made it about Dolly and Axel, but
Yes.
so just name your squirrel, because I think I might have assumed it was the two dogs. But
No, well, it is, but I was thinking more broadly. No, it's tech. So it's consumer tech. Always been really into it. I'm going through a process at the moment of trying to buy all of the old phones that I had as a kid, and it's funny how they're all sort of we're seeing bits coming back again. We're all kind of AI focused, chat GPT infused in everything, but actually we're seeing growth of flip phones and stuff. Like the bits that we crave and the excitement is starting to come back through.
yes, lovely answers. This is great. Now we're on to the one quirky or unusual fact about you, Josh Wheeler, we couldn't possibly know about you until you tell us.
Yes, so when I was 11, I fell off a climbing frame and I broke my arm. And I'm not doing a claim here. This is not that. But when I went to the hospital, but they set it incorrectly. So my left arm, I don't know if you can see,
Ooh,
the elbow is the sort of the wrong way round. And so
excellent.
when you put it down, it goes out into the middle. So it's a great party trick, or it's a great thing if you want to make someone be sick. That always helps.
Love that. And is there something you can stick your arm in and grab that nobody else can, which gives it a superpower quality?
Interestingly, it's the opposite, because actually where it's supposed to be, this bit shouldn't be poking out this way. So actually, if I needed to, my arm is probably wider where it needed to be thinner.
Well,
Always the challenge.
you can't have everything, can you? I like also, just to disclaim the disclaimer, I'm not making a claim here. That's lovely. We have shaken your tree, Josh Wheeler. Hurrah. Now we stay in the clearing, move away from the tree. Next, we talk about alchemy and gold. When you're at purpose in your life, what are you absolutely happiest doing in what you're here to reveal to the world?
I am the happiest that I am is when I am, and I've struggled with this one a little bit as well, because I really didn't want to make it just about work, but work is such a big part of what I do. I am genuinely happiest when I'm working on something where we've really pushed the boundary and it is effective. So we've pushed a spokesperson into you know, going down a road that they perhaps wouldn't have gone down. We've encouraged and guided a client to, you know, open up on something that ordinarily they might think is a bit of a dangerous topic or a difficult area, or yeah, effectively we've had that kind of nudging and we've got it through, and then it works, and then people kind of see, and there's a learning, and you see like the fireworks come off from it of, you know, oh, we could then do this, we could do that, we could do the other, and that for me is the best place of what I do for a living. Outside of life, you know, I also am just totally happy roughhousing with the dogs and playing toys and throwing. We've currently at the moment it's all about, we've got these fruit and veg squeaky toys. It's all about throwing them out at the door. Axel just goes wild for that. So one or the other, either or, either or.
And in the construct of legacy life reflections, this is also the moment where I may ask someone about, you know, in your long, very eclectic, polymathic life, your halcyon days. When do you know you've been at your absolute happiest? And with hindsight, your answers were great there. But let me just go a bit deeper into that.
Mm.
Halcyon days for you. Do you mind me asking how old you actually are? I'm making an assumption, but
I am 35.
so it's in the seven ages of man, which we're coming on to in terms of Shakespeare. That's exactly, you'll go way beyond this, but this is halfway there. 35,
Yeah,
three score year and 10. So yes,
it's
so
scary.
far then, and it ain't over till it's over. It's a roller coaster. But what would you describe as your halcyon days as being?
Ooh, ooh. I would say, oh, it's really tricky. Well, I would say there are two. There are two periods. The first one would be uni, um, in the sense of that uh, as a young person, I was always kind of gearing up to, I'm going to London, I'm doing this, you know, this is what's going to happen. And then hit with just mega amounts of freedom, not always good. Hit with millions of people, you know, get to know people's different stories, have a laugh, push back, like do all sorts of stuff that you'd never get to do. And I felt super confident, really. I felt really confident, not in an arrogant way, but just confident. I felt like I'd sort of arrived in that moment. I loved that whole period. It then sort of hit in my 20s, and it was just the difficulty and the challenge, and it just wasn't that fun. And then I would say here where we're at now with B Broadcast, because it's so intrinsic to me, I can make decisions and I can guide on what my gut tells me. So I'm now in a position where I don't have to surround myself, I don't have to get caught in what I would have always called kind of silly stuff. Um, and that I think means that again, I'm kind of back in that place where, you know, I'm at a confident edge, and we can back up our work. We can do all of that, the stuff that we want to do. And also we can kind of go, if that thing doesn't quite fit with where we're going, it's fine. That's fine. We're going to go off in a different direction. And that, so I would say those two periods
Yes.
kind of bookend that kind of challenging point. And like mentally, that challenging point was pretty rough. And so now it feels like a nice period.
Both pockets of empowerment is what I was hearing there. Interestingly, 7 years, we're talking about the 7 ages of man. I don't know if you've heard the idea that we all need to be really attuned to 7 year, not just itches, but 7 year cycles, because you're cellularly regenerated every 7 years. Your teeth are the same, but you're a new person. So that's why we need to be really attuned in the cycles of life.
Interesting. And did you know it's interesting that 7 is the thing? Because did you know that to release oxytocin in a hug, you have to hug for 7 seconds? The number 7 is an interesting, like the connections of things, but yeah, it makes sense. We have these periods, and I've always kind of joked about, I have in my life, I'll have 2 great years and then a year of chaos. Like, it's just you just anticipate it. Um, yeah, we go through these cycles of things.
And as a slight
Yeah,
backstory as well, second curve, so called because we're all on a curve or a trajectory. Your curve begins to wane. So what do you do to attach to your second curve that's going to pull you towards your future? So these are all about, towards the sunlight of your second curve. It's all a journey towards, and all
yeah,
change and transition in life is about the action towards, rather than just sitting there moaning. What are you going to do about it? What's the
yeah,
action you're going to take?
yeah.
Even getting in touch with you is an action. So I'm just aware of that. So, and now we're going to award you with a cake. Hurrah! This is actually a dog toy. Excellent. Dolly, you're going to love this. So, first of all, to talk about cake, do you like cake, Josh? And what cake would you like?
I'm not really a cake person, if I'm honest. I'm
I'm
more of an
very
ice cream person. Cake. I can do cake, but I'm more of an ice cream person.
excellent. So, let's have an ice cream flavor of choice.
So I always, my mates always take the mickey out of me for this, because we'll get like sundaes and stuff like that, and I always pick whatever it is that is the most like sugary, like almost like childlike, so like bubblegum, all that kind of, where it's just got everything shoved in.
Yeah,
That is the one that I go for.
boom. Love
Yeah.
that. So, a Knickerbocker Glory esque eaten mess sort of glob is yours.
100%. So, like, you've got all these pop-up places now where you get, and it's got like Haribo blended into stuff. Like, that is, for me, is like the top tier. It's just like chaos in a pot. And then, like, my mates will get like
Josh Wheeler,
chocolate
chaos in a
brownie.
pot. I love that. That's
Yeah,
great.
yeah.
So now you get to put a cherry on the cake. This is the last suffused with a storytelling metaphor. The cherry on the cake is now stuff like, what's a favorite inspirational quote in your life that's always given you succor and pulled you towards your future, Josh?
So this was interesting, and I was like, I can't say that. I can't say that. And I'm gonna say it, right? So I
Glad.
was thinking, I was like, I need to say someone really powerful, powerful, and etc. And actually, I'm not. I'm gonna go for one of the shows that I really enjoy. I love is The Hotel Inspector. I think The Hotel Inspector is a lovely program. I really enjoy it. It's comedy. It reminds me, it's a glass of wine on a Friday night. Like, love it. But what I also love is Alex Polizzi. So I think Alex Polizzi is really inspirational. I think that the work that she's done, she's both in terms of running her own organizations and a business, incredible. The gold standard of service, perfect. But also knowing exactly her lane, love. What she does is she delivers some of the most excruciating feedback, but in a lovely way. And I think
Nice.
that's incredible. And there's one line, and my old colleague Jess, there's a picture because she printed it out. She printed it out because I used to say it, and it was a picture of Alex Polizzi, and it just said, "Just do it, darling," and stuck that on the wall behind me. And actually, I think that is because the thing I think now is this: we spend so much time thinking about, is that the right thing? Should we do this? And I think more and more we've got to trust our gut, whether it's personal decisions, career decisions, strategy decisions, and sometimes we've just got to trust our gut a bit more, and we've just got to just do it, darling.
I love that. Thank you. With the gift of hindsight, what notes, help, or advice, you can pick an age that you'd like to arrive holographically back at yourself, but what notes, help, or advice might you proffer to a younger version of yourself, Josh?
The advice I would give, and I find myself now saying it to people, younger people, is calm down because calm down. It doesn't all need to be at 1,000 miles per hour. Um, by taking on everything, you're going to not get anything. And actually, what you really need to do is get the balance right, because when you get the balance right of life, work, family, everything that comes into kind of fruition, then all of the kind of the tectonic plates move at once. If you're just pushing one thing at 1,000,000 miles per hour, actually you end up, just becoming the person that's known for doing everything. And that was damaging. That was a tough one. So if I could go back and kind of have a quiet word, it would just be, you will progress. You will kind of go where you want to go. And if you aren't going to get what you actually want out of things, then you're not the type of character that's just going to sit there and wait. You're going to go off and do something else. And so just calm down and see things for what they are and just enjoy the moment a little bit more.
I love that interpretation of have a word with yourself, would you? And so I'm imagining just pick an age that you're appearing holographically next to yourself.
20, 23, 24.
Love that. Remember,
Yeah.
self-awareness is the holy grail. That's what we're in pursuance of.
Yeah.
That was a lovely answer. What's the best piece of advice you've ever been given by somebody else?
Ooh, it's interesting. The best piece of advice was, and at the time I took it really badly, and I actually have used it earlier. The best piece of advice um was to be like a swan. And actually at the time I thought this was a shocking piece of advice. This was ignoring the issue. It was, ignoring the challenge that was in front of us. And instead what you were kind of trying to kind of say was to almost mask it. And in truth, what I'd misinterpreted was that actually it wasn't saying that. It was more a case of, we are, this is how we'll tackle it, but ultimately what we don't want to do is blow this out and blow it further. And so again, these kind of moments were sort of all happening at the same time, and I was going at 1,000 miles per hour and thinking I needed to do this and impress that person and speak to this person and all that stuff, when actually what I really needed to do was just kind of ease back a little bit and feel more confident in ability, actions, direction, all of that stuff. And I think that only comes with experience and understanding, which is interesting how our sector works. We put people into some quite challenging positions where they're having to guide people with, maybe 10 plus more years of experience of doing things. And it's a really interesting little space. But I think that that advice, that combination somewhere of kind of trying to slow down whilst also being super fast and on the front foot, but trying to slow down and see things, is the advice I would look at kind of as the best piece I've had. But it
Maybe
didn't it didn't it didn't land well at the time. I went away and thought, what the actual F?
it's reminded me that of the adage of keep majestic, because swans are majestic. There could be all sorts of, as you say, paddling going on underneath, but to keep majestic.
Mm, yeah,
And
yeah.
I love the fact that it's got a currency of confidence, innate confidence in your ability to keep gliding and keep moving.
I think as well, I think that confidence is such an interesting one, because it's the reality is I don't think anybody really knows what they're doing, bluntly.
We're all winging it.
So
Yeah.
everyone is winging it
Yeah.
in different ways, and you build up your building blocks of, these are the things that I can bring to a situation. These are the things that I can, profiteer and I can put forward. but at the same time, everyone is in that same boat. And when you start to put all of these things together, you realize that, actually you don't need to be intimidated by that person. You don't need to be scared of this, but actually throwing out an idea, in the right way, in the right context, and kind of, plotting things out is really important. But we just, I don't know, something about it might be our society. We kind of just encourage that everything needs to be done yesterday,
Yeah.
and if you haven't done it 3 days ago, you're already behind the curve. And so we're all of us are just consistently behind, and so it just encourages everyone to fly at a million miles per hour when actually, really, most things need us to kind of just pause and go, "Huh," especially in the age of AI, which can do it in 4 seconds.
And do you know what's so relatable? I was asked to give a talk a couple of weeks ago at the Festival of Sustainable Business, and I used the word sustain to talk about how can we sustain the pressure of feeling like we're barking into a sea of noise when AI is also competing to bark into that sea of noise. And I wrapped it around a joke, which was, do songbirds ever get slightly pissed off with hummingbirds for never having bothered to learn the song or the words? And actually, in truth, linked to something called slow leadership. Slow down, slow
Mm,
down. We need to
mm.
probably be more hummingbird, because hummingbirds are majestic. They get the nectar and they just hum about, and we're drawn to them because they're majestic.
It's interesting you talk about sounds as well, because we for a client, I don't know if you use Slack.
I have
We
2 channels, but I don't use them as much as I should.
Oh, good, because we embedded it in, and I love ways of communication. I'm open to all of it, but I had to ban it because I found it I found it to be incredibly disruptive, in the sense of it was instant messaging, but in what would previously be kind of client communication. So client communication is a skill. You hone the art of writing an email in your kind of early years, writing an email, explaining what a piece of coverage is, and that is important because you have to have that there. By the time you're, old and haggard in my time, you can do it standing on your head, but you have to have those building blocks to be able to be there, so that you can then advise about which publication, which outlet you go for. I found it to be, everything was so instant, and actually you can't learn those skills in an instant environment. Where's this
Yeah,
thing? Here's a link. Da, 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 da. And it's happening all whilst you're doing something else. So actually, when I want somebody to be focusing in on the art of writing research questions that are going to create a standout news story, I don't want them being distracted by a pop-up here. And
yeah,
so that makes a noise, and in the end I was like, actually no, this is counterintuitive,
yes.
and so we got rid of it. I want when we communicate, I want the communication to be the front and center focus. I don't want us doing 17 things at once
Yes.
badly. I want us to do individual things at the right time, strategically and correctly. That's
So
important.
be more hummingbird, and again, the slow leadership is a really good. And if you're just moving all the time, you're not going to be able
Yep.
to sort of be able to
Yep.
properly pace, realizing it's a marathon, not a dash, basically.
Yep, absolutely. There's benefits to all of these things, but there are lots of different tools that you can use. And I think just picking the de facto because is not the way to go, and that's why we got rid of it.
And as you've also stumbled into brilliantly earlier on, there's such an overwhelm of different platforms one can use.
Mhm.
As it happens, I quite like WhatsApp because it does what Slack sort of does, but better. I love
Ditto,
WhatsApp.
ditto.
Excellent. So now, just another strand to do with legacy life reflections. Do you have a favorite piece of music? Because Dan, my podcast editor, is brilliant at texturing in music. So if I just say to you, surprisingly now, weren't expecting this, what would you say a favorite piece of music is for you, Josh?
So I would say a song called um, "Damaged" by an artist called Plummet, and it's like a trance track from 2003. it probably got to like number 48 in the charts. But
Boom.
I my concentration, if I need to concentrate, I listen to heavy, intense trance music. Always done it. Really bizarre and weird, but if I need to switch off, that's where I'm going. And I've got a playlist that's entirely dedicated to that. But that one song, weirdly, is it's embedded.
Just say
Yeah.
the name again to reincorporate it deliberately.
So it is called Damaged by a band called Plummet.
Dan, my podcast editor, you'll know exactly what to do. Wasn't that beautiful? Lovely. Now then, finally, we're ramping up to talk about Shakespeare. I'll talk about legacy in a minute. But just before we get there, this is the pass the golden baton moment, please. They don't like it up with Mr. Menrin. But what I'd like to invite you to do is, now you've experienced this from within, who would you most like to pass the golden baton along to in order to keep the golden thread of the storytelling going, Josh?
So I would like to pass the baton to my friend James, James Richards. He uh, he is actually really inspirational. It's going to annoy me to say it at the same breath, because he's also an absolutely terrible person. I'm joking. He's lovely, but he is the campaigns director at Munch. And he's also the founder of an organization called Moobs. So James was diagnosed with breast cancer a couple of years ago, and just the way he's kind of come through all of that, he created effectively a bit of a charity in the sense of to kind of help other people, the challenges of, you'll note I said breast cancer as opposed to male breast cancer, really tackling a subject with stigma. And I love the way that he's done it, and I love him. But I think he would be great. He faced mortality, and did so with class and dignity, and with a smile in the same sense. And I think he's brilliant. I think he'd be great at this.
James Richards, I'm coming for you. That's fantastic. Lovely. So now, inspired by Shakespeare, all the world's a stage and all the bedded women merely players, again, because of my acting background, we've borrowed from the Seven Ages of Man's speech, JQ's As You Like It. And so now, when all is said and done, how would you most like Josh Wheeler to be remembered?
I would most like to be remembered as someone that helped. Think as someone that helped. There isn't uh, one in particular thing, but that someone that looked at situations and tried to make them better in in lots of different ways. I think that's what I personally aspire to. It's just trying to make a small difference to things. And if we can use our skill set of PR to be able to do that, fantastic. But I love seeing people that are just trying to do something. That for me is kind of what gets me up each day. That could be a brand, that could be a major organization, that could be, someone that's just come up with an idea and they're going to try and rally their community. To me, it's equal. It's in equal measure. One maybe has, a broader voice, but that's perhaps where we come into play. So I think if I were going to be remembered, it would be as someone that helped. I'd also like to be remembered as rebellious, and I'm not going to sit and um, kind of just accept status quo, which we haven't. As B Broadcast, we've challenged our bit of the industry. We've got rid of things like um, compete clauses that are a scourge on our industry, and hurt freelancers, hurt people that are perhaps having a difficult time in one place or another. And I think that is kind of where I'd like to be. We will always have a rebellious, naughty streak within us, and the rub that we can have on people that are doing similar things, I think is where I'd like us to be in the future.
And reading between the lines, my interpretation of that is that you're removing the compete clause, meaning freelancers can go where they like because they deserve to keep working and don't worry about any overlap. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
I
So
love
yeah, it's we were born with it because it impacted me. We were born with it. So I had a it was a difficult thing to kind of work through. Um, and rather than just follow that same trend of, that's just what happens, I wanted to kind of make it a better situation for people that are coming through. So, you know, competition in the market, if somebody works here and then in 5 years' time decides to leave and set up their own thing, great, great. That's not a knock on us. It's somebody giving themselves a different shot in life. Similarly, for a freelancer, if they have an amazing relationship with a client and they do incredible work, and that client decided to work with them by themselves, I can't control that, so I don't need to try and pseudo threaten my own team
Yeah.
that that would happen. So it's exactly that. It's making sure that rather than me having strings to kind of hold those people, actually it's on me to make an environment that you don't want to leave, until the point where you're going to go on and do something amazing. That is the thinking.
I think that has such integrity, and congratulations. That must be music to the world of freelancing. And I completely agree with you. That's absolutely the way to be. Absolutely.
It's
Hurrah.
we don't need to be like the 80s anymore. We can move on. We can move on.
Yeah, one of the best leaders I ever worked with in speaking to them used to so enjoy developing their people so much that when they then flew off to do something else, that was the whole point, rather than preciously guarding. And as you say,
Yeah.
being a puppet master and trying to sort of bind people by their strings. Lovely stuff.
Mm.
Okay, so now this is a very exciting moment, which is called Show Us Your QR Code, please. Hurrah. So if you've been watching this as well, very exciting. You can scan a QR code to Josh Wheeler. First of all, we're going to go to the bbroadcast.co.uk website. So there it is. So Josh, tell us what the domain is for those that are just listening but not able to watch and scan.
So it's just bbroadcast.co.uk, and that has everything about us, what we do, and some of the stories we tell.
Awesome. And if you'd like to connect also with Josh on LinkedIn, you can go here. This is now. So where just tell us if when we're listening, not watching, you can scan it whilst you're listening.
Oh,
So
I
where would you?
think
Yeah.
I would. Yeah, it's just. I think it's Josh Wheeler PR. Or if you just search Josh Wheeler, I should come up. I'm the one with pink somewhere in the background.
Senior consultancy, senior delivery, everything you do. Fantastic. I'll come back to you in a second, but just a couple of announcements from me. If you'd like a conversation about guesting in the show too, my website for everything we've been doing is thegoodlistening2show.com. There's another very exciting QR code. And then very excitingly, there is a series strand within it that's been part of the Mountainscape all along, now that I'm 5 years in, 250 episodes into the show, where legacy life reflections is a really wonderful cut and thrust, as I said at the beginning, to record either your own story or the story of somebody near, dear, or close to you for posterity. Again, without any morbid intention, but lest we forget before it's too late. And coming full circle back to Josh, you even did a PR job on the Grim Reaper yourself back in the day. So it's to just enjoy the fact that everybody has an interesting story to tell, provided you give them the courtesy of a damn good listening to, and that's the whole cut and thrust of what I'm up to. Josh, back to you. As this has been your moment in the sunshine in the Good Listening To show, stories of distinction and genius, is there anything else you'd like to say?
I think I think the thing I'd like to say is let's get back to supporting each other in lots of different ways. I think we've talked for years about various challenges. We've talked about challenges within community, we've talked about challenges within business, we've talked about all of these things. And actually, very often, the key to unlocking things is just speaking to each other and sharing stories and having the realization that actually we're not that dissimilar. We're not that unique in the sense of we're all pretty much the same. And I think we've gone insular, and I don't even think it was to do with COVID. I think it had happened pre-COVID. I think something really needs to uh, unpick itself, and I think it only comes from us taking that first step. So try and speak. We've done campaigns about like community stuff. So try and speak to a neighbor and like just smile at people, and because those little things just start to unlock a broader connection. If you're on LinkedIn, comment on somebody's post that you wouldn't normally comment on. Just show that you're an active person, because it does start to kind of feedback and come into it. I think that's really important.
Lovely. And one final announcement for me, very excitingly, as we record this together on the 4th of July, American Independence, tomorrow, Robert Brydon is coming in to do a live theatre show version of this. There's another series strand where I live in Bristol called Best of Bristol, Bristol Voices, which is where the theatre space, the Redgrave Theatre, exists. I'm also broadcasting from Future Leap Studios, who is my wonderful, swanky glow-up studio. So thank you very much indeed for listening. I've been Chris Grimes, but very, very importantly, this has been Josh Wheeler from Be Broadcast. Anything else you'd like to say, Josh?
All good. You've covered it. I think it's you said about the passing. We've done things like where you've looked at people's eulogies and how difficult that can be at a time. And you know what? The best bits is telling people stories. So this kind of thing is something we should all be looking at, because it allows then the family and friends to look back. It's gold dust.
Wonderful. And very, very much looking forward to future collaborations, Mr. Josh Wheeler. Thank you so much for taking the time. Happy holes. I hope the sun shines majestically and brightly, and you'll
It
be
better.
majestic. Otherwise, you'll get furious and you'll smash your avocados. So thank you very much indeed. I've been Chris Grimes. That's been Josh Wheeler.